Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are safe and doing well. I would like to thank you for joining us in the web panel discussion of contactless commerce. In this pandemic, we get infection from anywhere. We can get infection from anywhere, and that's why we want to remain safe and we are avoiding the contact from anywhere. We want to place the order online and want to receive the deliveries in the common area, want to do the payment digitally. The cash is the least preferred option. In a nutshell, retail is changing and it has gone more online. A study in US says that a typical user is spending 31.2% more in comparison to last year. This same double-digit growth is noticed in the other region as well. It becomes imperative for a brand to sell on multi-channel and adopt contactless commerce as a promise to the customer. Today, we will talk about what is this change and how the brands are adopting this change for their users. Let me start with the panel introduction. We have Mr. Manav Gupta. Welcome, Manav. Manav is a veteran in digital technology, having almost 20 years of experience. Manav did master from Roster Institute of Technology from New York and did financial risk management from IIM Bangalore. Manav is working as Chief Operating Officer at Urban Piper, which is promising to simplify the online commerce. Urban Piper is our valued partner, and we are solving many requirements of contactless commerce together. Our second panelist.
Thanks, Rahul. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here.
Our second panelist is Mr. Karthik Mishra. Karthik is working as Head of Strategy and New Initiative at Danjo. Karthik did Bachelor from IIT Madras, Masters from MIT, and Karthik was working with McKinsey before Danjo. Danjo become a verb today. Let's Danjo it. Whenever we want to send anything faster within the same city. It is not only accomplishment for a brand to become a verb, it is also interesting to know how Danjo is evolving fast in the changing requirement of retail. Finally, I am Rahul Singhal, Head of Implementation with Vinculum Solution, playing the role of moderator today in this session.
Thanks a lot, Rahul, for the introduction. Super excited to be here and share my experiences.
Welcome, Karthik. At Vinculum, we have done a lot of implementation with many brands and help them to sell on omni-channel. Lot of things are evolving in this COVID time. We are helping brands to grow in this new normal, like appointment booking at the store, curbside pickup are picking up very fast. Thank you, Manav and Karthik, for taking out time today. We have a very strong audience today, and it would be delightful to hear your point of view on contactless commerce. Few hygiene facts I would like to mention. We kept attendees on mute until we open house for question. Do send your question in the chat box. We would love to answer each and every question on a first come first serve basis. If any question remain unanswered because of paucity of time, then we will come back privately after this session. So let's start. My first question is, contactless commerce is a response to a rapid change in the shopping habit. Manav, it would be great if you can take this first and advise what are the key habits you have noticed that have resulted this evolution. And also, it would be interesting to know that what habits will continue to play in this retail. Yeah. Manav, should I repeat?
Thanks, Rahul. No, I got it. Thanks, Rahul. So the term contactless commerce, it's a new term which got coined during COVID. In the way I see it, it's an ecosystem for which the supporting elements have been created over a decade. It will not be right to talk about contactless commerce without going over the evolution of commerce. in the last decade in India. So how I see it, over a period of time, society has been moving towards a low touch commerce model. I mean, long back when we used to call to our favorite restaurant, or you can call it to your local kirana store and get things delivered, was the beginning of a low touch commerce, which where you did not need to go to the outlet and get things delivered at home. Now, as the need grew and as technology came in to rescue, this resulted into a bigger value proposition of online commerce. With online commerce coming in, multiple players coming in the segments like Amazon, Flipkart, BigBasket, Dunzo, and validation of increasing customer traction, settle down the industry on online commerce pre-COVID time. Now, I would also want to touch base on the few important factors which led to this growth of low touch and online commerce. The most important one is the lifestyle change. With both partners working, their families present, there is no time anyone has to go to the store to eat out or go to the store for groceries. This resulted into creation of demand, now supported by the infrastructure enhancement in the country, dependable and affordable network. Now, penetrations of smartphones in the country resulted into creation of the term online commerce. The most important part, which was brought in by the early entrants of the online commerce space, was trying to gain the user experience. And if you order online, things will get delivered and will give you the same customer experience what we are offering in store. The hassle-free online standard customer support with reduced time to delivery, no shipping cost, no questions asked for a return, and competitive pricing made all of this possible and made sure that the commerce in the country took a new route using technology. Now, all of this was happening perfectly fine and its own speed pre-COVID. Here comes COVID. The current danger of transmitting the virus via contact is a force big enough to create a cut down, need for creating a cut down in touch points. Now, the new normal of social distancing, lockdown, restrictions, use of face mask and sanitizer is big enough barrier for people to change their behavior. Now, this change of behavior happening by the restrictions is resulting into something called contactless commerce. But again, as I said, the pieces of the puzzles were already there. The fine tuning of that commerce model to cut down all the touch points is contactless commerce. Another interesting point, you asked me, how do I see the future, which I want to another few minutes describing my vision of how things are going to grow. But for the long period of time, what we have been doing is we have been browsing the menus or the catalog in a singular dimension. It is the need of time to be able to get the feel of the shape, size, accurate colors while we are looking at things remotely. Maybe a Zoom shopping, maybe a better way of producing, providing the real picture of the item is the need for the hour at the most important point, because when you are able to see the things as real as possible, then then you are more confident and able to take decisions immediately. The second point which needs development in the industry is payments. Although payments have came a long way, but it is far from convenience. All of us do maybe 10 times a day, 300 times a month, and every time you need to take out a card or a phone or any mode where you need to complete a transaction. I won't call it convenience. I mean, just to give an example, convenience is what most of us marry one time in life, or some of us do marry multiple times. But convenience is going to say I accept and you are married. That's convenience. Compared to that, we need to bring the payment. We need that convenience where human presence in the store is good enough to acknowledge. The number third point is the delivery. Now, at this point in time, we are restricted by the time to deliver, by the cost of delivery, and this needs to be addressed by technology. Maybe drone delivery is the future, where we are not. I'm not looking to browse only the restaurants or the grocery stores which are 3 kilometer radius. I am allowed to browse full Bangalore. So again, there's a need for that, and the grocery and their automation will help. Last and the important point is automation on supply chain. We have seen case studies on how Amazon has done the automation of supply chain. We need more adaptation to that. And that's how I see the future of retail commerce going forward. Thanks, Rahul, back to you.
Great, Manav. It's a very insightful information. Karthik, we would love to know your view as well.
Fantastic, Rahul. I think Manav has actually covered like most of the aspects that have actually been driving this whole new evolution of contactless commerce, especially that nuance around convenience economy, right? You have this double income, no kid families a lot, higher disposable income, lesser time. Right? I think the base is built on what we are calling as convenience economy, on top of which contactless commerce is built. I think there have been two other nuances is that what we have seen. One is the fact that if you look at the demand side, because of COVID, consumers are actually willing to pay a premium for contactless service, right? Previously, such services, the economics was very, very difficult to make it work. But now, because users are so conscious about safety, users are so conscious about convenience, they're actually willing to pay a premium. And this premium actually means that you can actually run these services in a much more economically feasible fashion. The second one that we have seen is the fact that when you look at the physical stores, right? Because the walk-in order volume has decreased, a lot of these stores have literally transitioned into omni-channel points where they're servicing the limited walk-in volumes as well as serving warehouses to move items kind of through the delivery process, right? Like for example, if you look at BR Mall in Bangalore, right? You can actually order from BR Mall in Bangalore through a Zoom chat on their website. And it's this kind of world where actual physical stores are turning into omni-channel points for both walk-in as well as kind of deliveries. I think these are the two big changes, both on the demand side as well as the supply side, that's actually further fueling kind of this contactless kind of commerce, right? And this is like kind of two nuances that at least we have seen.
Thanks, Karthik. So Karthik, my next question to you is, I checked Dunzo website and I noticed that you Dunzo cater the 8 categories. So want to understand how the contactless commerce have played in the top categories where Dunzo operate.
Fantastic, Rahul. I think you can actually order anything from Dunzo. Yes, the focus is on the top 8 kind of categories kind of currently. I think there are we'll have to look at what Dunzo has been able to do, and obviously the big part is that these actual offline retailers are also adapting kind of to this contactless world, right? So strictly from Dunzo's option, we introduced contactless delivery options where you can actually instruct the delivery partner to drop the items at the security or outside your door so that we actually maintain social distancing. We have actually introduced temperature checks kind of at all of the for all of our delivery partners on a frequent basis. I think one of the key things that we actually did on the tech side was that in every city you have these high volume stores, say a La Marche in Gurgaon or like a Namdharis in Bangalore, where you actually see a lot of delivery boys crowding up at the store. So we actually built a technology which kind of predicts as to how much time a delivery boy would take at each store and sends the delivery boys accordingly, so that you suddenly don't have 30 delivery boys at a store, right? Because we need to ensure social distancing even at the stores. I think that's been one of the biggest things that has kind of worked out. And one of the big things that we also saw is that whenever there is a what we call a pandemic epidemic in India, people immediately ghar bhag jate, right? And this severely impacted offline retailers because the store executives actually went back to their villages. So these people are actually struggling with manpower. So we actually helped these people get manpower. Some of our delivery partners kind of who had more bandwidth ended up serving as store executives for some of the top stores, right? So this is what kind of Dunzo kind of we did. One also interesting aspect we introduced was that we limited the number of items people could order, and because we did not really want to encourage hoarding, right? And that's something we got like great applause from the government as well. But I think the biggest change actually has been in the offline retail world, right? Because this is been the most pleasant surprise because the offline retailers have actually transitioned towards better packaging on their own, right? Because a lot of these people never really had any packaging, much more safer packaging, much more eco-friendly packaging. Some of the larger stores, you would actually see that they have now carved out separate sections where the walk-in customers have a separate section, delivery boys have a like a kind of a separate section to limit the inflow. And they've also kind of done a lot of the demand planning to ensure that the essential items are actually available at all points of time, right? I think that's been the biggest kind of change, that not just tech companies like Dunzo, but the actual offline retailers have been adapting contactless commerce kind of so well. Right? I think that gives us the what do you call the most impact to the society. If your actual Kirana store, if the actual offline retailer is also being bought into this one.
Yep. Thank you, Karthik. Manav, it would be great if you can share some insight from food industry.
So thanks, Rahul. Rahul, putting up from the point where the food material is available on the shelf for consumption or purchase, you can broadly categorize the food industry into two segments. One is the segment where you are buying your essentials and ingredients to cook at home, named as grocery space. And another is a segment where you are getting the prepared food or meals delivered to home, denominated by the restaurant space. Now, again, the evolution in both the restaurant and grocery has been similar as what I spoke earlier, where started with the phone ordering, and with the penetration of smartphone and technology, went on for the mobile app ordering. And there was one more step where the mobile app ordering from the brands was not good enough, because you were looking for a single place to browse all possible availabilities in your neighborhood. Came a time where the food deliveries or the grocery delivery companies came in and did well pre-COVID. So again, these companies coming into the equation and dominating the market is what the situation has been pre-COVID, with the evolution of commerce for both grocery and restaurant space. Then came COVID. Now, again, no one was prepared. No one had an idea how things are going to be. In the beginning, the impact of COVID on both grocery and restaurants was very different. In the beginning, the restaurant industry came to a standstill. For the first month of COVID, we as industry insiders noticed, volumes cut down to less than 10%, 20% of what it used to be for all segments of grocery. Now, as people have accepted COVID as this is going to stay and not going to be a temporary thing, and they opened up accepting that food is something they can't stay away. They are now more open to order food home from the restaurant space. They're still not open to walk into the restaurants and consume food there. So the food segments like cloud kitchens and the quick service restaurant, which had a higher penetration of online commerce, are recovering faster as COVID is moving. And the term which came to their rescue is contactless delivery. Again, the term has few changes from the online delivery, where cutting down on the human touch wherever possible is being put in the place. Now, the other restaurant space, which is dine-in, where people are still scared to walk in, is still going through a very rough phase. And the technology which is being built to address this is called contactless dine-in. Again, something which we need to keep an eye on. A little early to comment, is it going to be successful? Is it going to be adopted? But time will tell. Now, coming back on the grocery space, what happened at the beginning of the COVID, there was an immediate surge on people ordering groceries home. The surge was so huge that even the existing players like Dunzo, Big Basket, Grofers tried to increase all the throughput, was not enough to serve the market. Then we see a wave of new entrants like Swiggy's and Zomato's coming into the grocery space to fill in the gap. But that was still not enough on the demand which we were seeing on grocery deliveries or contactless grocery commerce. So again, brands are still noticing, the grocery chains are still noticing queues of people standing outside the grocery stores because of the restriction on how many people can be there in one time. waiting for their turn to enter a grocery store. Now a technology which can let them browse and order standing outside the grocery store, and as soon as that's packed, pick it up and take home, will be something which can help meet the demand. And that's the contactless commerce coming in for the grocery space, which is again work in progress.
Thanks, Manav. In the continuation of the last question, in the contactless commerce, we have noticed one trend, which is that traditional retail is going to D2C. Brands are setting up the kiosk, weekend kiosk or regular kiosk in the apartments, sharing the catalog on the WhatsApp. So is this trend is going to stay? What are the operational hazards and efficiency this model will bring? So
that's a great question, Rahul. I think because D2C seems to be the big buzzword these days. So just wanted to spend some time talking about how different brands kind of view direct to commerce, right? So kind of we can broadly categorize young challenger brands and also think about large established brands like your ITCs, P&Gs, right? So when you think of a young upcoming challenger brand or private label, the singular biggest challenge that they face is distribution, right? Because if you actually want to get your stock stocked at a general trade outlet, you need 1,000-member sales team who's actually going and doing their distribution. And unfortunately, young upcoming brands are constrained on that. So for them, D2C literally becomes the only option to be able to kind of drive kind of demand to their stores, right? I think that's something that's been happening for a while. India is only now opening up to the whole private label and new brand space. So that's something that we will see kind of continuing for a longer time. If you look at it from a larger brand lens, I think they had not really taken it kind of with the same set of intensity, but I think COVID has literally opened their eyes, because when COVID happened, suddenly the supply chain was broken and these large brands were not able to reach directly to their consumers. There was lockdown, trucks couldn't move between cities, and that is when and the retailers were not able to stock. In many places, retailers did not have the people to be able to keep their stores open. And that's when all of these large brands actually started experimenting with kind of the D2C, where they literally converted their physical warehouses within the city limits as kind of pickup points, right? The big advantage that you see is that this kind of shortens the supply chain, because you now are limiting the number of layers that are between the manufacturing point and the user. So this obviously leads to substantial cost advantages, and which, if the model actually does scale, we'll eventually see that cost getting translated to the user. The other advantage that you will see is that typical stores don't want to stock all of the 25 SKUs that a brand may have. They only want to stock the high selling SKUs. But if the brand is actually owning the D2C, the entire depth of SKUs, even like a very tail SKU, is now available to the user, right? Which is extremely important. Like there are specific products which are needed for specific segments of the year, right? I think that's the big advantage that the user will have, in terms of choice, and second, hopefully in the longer term, in terms of being able to get better prices. However, I think the one thing that we will definitely see is that running a D2C model is a very, very different model to a pure play distribution model, where you're actually stocking stuff at a retailer. In all essence, these warehouses are, which served as large pickup points, will now end up becoming pickup points directly to the consumer. And it's a slightly different skill set. So I think that it's a process of learning for the large brands in trying to understand what works. Do they need to build different skill set? Do they need to hire different set of teams, right? So I think it's going to be a like a continuum, a process. Over time, I think they'll definitely be able to crack it. I think I am personally very, very bullish on the kind of the D2C world.
Yes, even my views are very same. The D2C will evolve, and it is going to be game changer. Manav, your thoughts on this?
So yeah, I think Karthik covered a lot of it in detail in a way. He has explained how it works. Now, from my viewpoint, are very similar to what Karthik is saying. Look, this is conventionally it's a 3-tier architecture on which a traditional retail operates. There is a producer or a manufacturer who's manufacturing the good. There is a distributor who's picking it up from the manufacturing unit and creating the supply, owning the supply chain. And then there is a retailer who's finally selling it to the end consumer. But what has happened due to COVID is there is a huge pressure on demand. demand in silo is nothing. Demand, when we talk in terms of pricing, is what is important to look at. So demand at the existing price has gone down. The only solution to cater to the manufacturing units is to bring the demand back. Now that can be done, and everyone is in the supply chain is realizing that that can be done by reducing the cost. Now, what are the methodologies by which you can reduce the cost and bring the demand back in the market? And one of the answers is D2C. I mean, in fact, the way I see it, all three, a producer, a distributor, and a retailer now is trying to own end to end, so that the bifurcation of profit gets passed on to the end consumer, and they get to see the same demand as what they were seeing pre-COVID times. I believe this again, in the end, the consumers are seeing an advantage to it. Where, for example, talk about Ratnagiri mangoes got exported usually to US. Most of it this year, I got to eat a lot of it in my community. So I see advantages coming in, and I believe the hybrid model is there to stay, and time will tell at what point we'll settle in.
Great, thanks, Manav. So, want to understand that what advice you give to the brands and the retailers who are already moving forward in the contactless commerce journey. So what key success factors they should keep in the mind? So Manav, can you take this?
Sure, Rahul. So yeah, I believe quick adaptation is the mantra right now. The survival for the brands is at risk. Now, when I say quick adaptation, you can't take 6 months to decide what solution to deploy when the problem is right now. You have queues of customer waiting to get served, and you can't wait. The time is not what we have in order to serve them. Now, while you need to quickly decide, you need to be careful in terms of what is the investment of time, money, and effort, depending on the segment you are, which you are putting in. Look, again, in software development terms, we call it proof of concept, POCs. So
Yes.
what you need to do is you need to do a quick POC to evaluate that are your customers adapting to this new technology that you have taken? Is your brand happy and comfortable with what you are doing? Again, if the answer of all of this is coming in a positive way, then you can decide to build a very detailed solution which you can build in-house, or take a product company, or go hire a services company and go from there. Now, in terms of key success factor to keep in mind, when we are trying to adopt to the contactless commerce, we are bringing a new normal into the equation. When we are trying to bring a change, it will be advisable to keep as many unknown components out of the equation as possible. So launching the contactless commerce with the known user interfaces, maybe a WhatsApp, maybe a Facebook, would be the right way, so that the users are only looking at one new challenge, which is contactless commerce, and are not struggling to adopt to it. And yeah, I mean, in terms of time, the value, you need to be very, very focused on also on the customer journey in the new system, because there is certain behavioral aspect to it, where a lot of people go into the grocery store, feel the items before you order. So you need to think about the user journey, which is also very important and should be kept in mind while designing a system for content.
Great. So Karthik, Danjo works with a lot of brands and retailers. So what advice you want to give to them? Karthik?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, perfect. I think, Rahul, I think two big things that we have learned. I think Manav covered a lot of things. I think one of the biggest things is, since you're moving to a contactless world, communication is extremely important, right? You should be able to build that level of trust with the user that, hey, I am doing X, Y, Z to enable a safe contactless experience for you. And it needs to be a two-way channel, right? Where the user is actually able to say, hey, मेरे को ये अच्छा नहीं लगा, आपको ये करना चाहिए. And unless it's a two-way channel, a contactless world doesn't really work, right? And I think that's one of the big things that kind of brands and retailers need to keep in mind. The second thing is that in a contactless world, what happens is that now there is direct communication between kind of those two layers. So the user experience, responsibility and accountability now lies with the retailers and the brands, right? So there's a lot more accountability, and that's something that brands need to be kind of consciously aware of. And the third thing is that, yes, it's a process, but brands, retailers need to be conscious about the fact that whenever they're opening up this world, it actually is opened up to their entire product suite. It is not limited to certain specific products, certain specific variants, right? Because otherwise, if the user has to split between buying offline and buying kind of online, it's not really a great consumer experience. I think those would be the couple of things, but I think Manav talked about the big thing about it being a constant adaptation, because new changes will come in and brands really and retailers can't really wait. Try. I think that's probably the key that Manav hinted at.
So whatever the decision brand take, they need a solution which is adaptive and can be rolled out quickly.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Karthik, just want to understand from your view, is a contactless commerce is a boon or is a bane for the brand and retailer?
Interesting. So I think as Manav and I covered early part of the year is that shopping behavior evolves, right? I think it has evolved over the past 100 years, and the contactless world is an eventuality. What COVID has done is that it has accelerated that journey from 10 years to like a couple of years, right? So instead of thinking of it as a boon or a bane, the way I visualize is because this is the new normal. This is how the world is going to be. Consumers, brands, retailers, we all need to adapt around that. Because honestly, whether it's a boon bane, it's too early to say, but it's going to be the eventuality. We should all make our efforts to kind of adapt to that new normal. And I think that's where a lot of the ecosystem has already started shaping up, especially with a player like Urban Piper helping all of these offline stores come online, improve the entire cataloging process, right? So all of these changes are happening in parallel, right? It's something that we all need to kind of adapt. I think adaptation is the key than just thinking about whether it is a boon or bane, because the eventuality here, like it's just a matter of when the trigger happens, but it's an eventuality if you ask me.
Great. Manav, what is your view on this?
So I think Karthik covered it beautifully. I mean, the view is same that looking at contactless commerce as a boon or a ban is not a right yardstick. Again, because we are not saying that contactless commerce is trying to replace anything which is existing right now. It is the need of the hour, and it is the direction the industry is moving, and this is all we need to adopt to as the new normal. I mean, similarly as what Karthik said, the acceleration due to COVID. I have an analogy which I talk about. When we talk about how things have moved, similar to what is happening on commerce in COVID, is how payment space was. In the payment space, the QR code payments was there for a long time.
Yep.
And then came demonetization. What demonetization did to the QR code based payments was adaptation from the business and the users. And that became the new normal for that period of time. And then the adaptation from the consumers still, there was a stickiness there, and that got stick by. And today I can pay my vegetable vendor on the cart using a QR code mode of payment. Similarly, what has happened in the restaurant, in the food space is because of COVID, there is a higher penetration and adaptation to the technology of contactless commerce. With time, we will know how much of this will stick by and what is there which will go away based on the businesses and their ease of use and their customer adaptation. But this is a direction which we are all of us are moving, and that's the future.
Great. Manav, just want to know if you have received any request or demand or any change in Urban Piper, which became a game changer during the COVID time.
Sure. So I think, very relevant question, and this is again what we have changed, and this is what the startups are all about: being agile and adapt to the market needs. So what we noticed during COVID is the grocery delivery surged because of COVID, resulting in multiple companies, including Dunzo, Urban Piper, enhancing their existing stack or launching new products. So in Urban Piper, we launched a new product which was a hub for groceries. The hub is our marquee product which helps integrate the brands and the restaurant. We launched it for groceries, providing integration with Dunzo, Swiggy, and Zomato in the grocery space. Same customers who were earlier operating only on food, they started asking for multiple new channels to optimize their outreach, resulting in a lot of new local aggregators and services being created during COVID times. I mean, to that extent that Urban Piper right now we have about 15 new partner integrations in pipeline, and all related to online and contactless commerce. I mean, interestingly, earlier the situation used to be that we used to chase aggregators to provide their integrations, and now the situation has changed, and we are chasing Urban Piper to integrate and go live.
So likewise, the situation at Vinculum is also same. Like we have received a lot of requirements, and people want to do the changes in the system. People are inquiring about appointment booking, curbside pickup, etc. So things are evolving in quite fast mode. Karthik, are you able to recall any requirement or any development which happened in Dunzo as in the COVID time?
Yeah, I think COVID, I think one of the big changes that we saw in demand patterns was, so pre-COVID, one of the biggest items being sold on Dunzo was an anti-hangover drink. But like because of COVID, the sales of anti-hangover drink has stopped. I mean, maybe people are drinking less at home. But I think, on a more serious note, I think one of the biggest developments and one of the things that we're more excited about is the fact that people are actually willing to tip delivery partners, right? Because India doesn't really have a tipping culture like the Western world. And for the lack of a better term, there is this whole dignity of labor wala concept missing in India. But I think COVID has actually changed that. People are actually appreciating the risks that a delivery partner is taking in trying to deliver things. And that's been a very, very pleasant surprise, where we have actually seen a massive boost in users tipping delivery partners on their own. I think that's something I'm very, very excited about, because I think at the end of the day, we should be grateful for all the services that we are getting beyond just the delivery fee that we pay, right? I think that's something that Dunzo has been extremely excited about.
Great. So, Karthik, few days back, I read in newspaper that Dunzo got approval from DGCA for the drone trial. It was a fantastic news, and best wishes to Dunzo family. So, want to know that what are the plan around that?
Thanks, Rahul. I think jahan pe bhi main jata hu, the drone conversation always comes up. Right. So I think fundamentally what we believe is that you have delivery boys delivering today. You'll have then drones delivering in the future, and maybe in some time in the future teleportation hoga. I mean, that's how technology evolves, right? But I think, yes, we have gotten the permissions to the testing right now. The testing is now currently just limited to 3 companies who have gotten approval. And yesterday, I actually able to saw the first photo of the drones that we would be kind of piloting with. But I think it's, to be honest, we are extremely, extremely early in the drones journey. And especially in a country like India, right? Because in a country like India, actually operating drones for the last mile has got lots of operational challenges. Kitne logo ke ghar pe actually balconies hai. Plus, if you have flying drones, people will throw stones at it, right? So it has got lots of other challenges. The government has also not carved out drone pathways, right? So what we see is that the drone development, the journey will happen over a few phases, where the phase 1 would actually be drones being used for hub-to-hub pickup. Instead of being directly at your doorsteps, it will be hub-to-hub. Say, I need to send something from Dunzo office in Indiranagar to Manav's office in Whitefield. What might happen is that a drone will pick it up from Indiranagar, drop it at a hub in Whitefield, from which a delivery boy will pick it up and then kind of drop it at Manav's office, right? Think of Bangalore traffic. From Indiranagar to Whitefield, it takes an hour and 15 minutes. But now you'll be able to do the journey in 15 minutes, right? I think we're super excited about it. Hub-to-hub spot. I think the users might not be able to see it, but users can actually feel the time difference, because it will be a lot more faster. But I think, to be honest, it is a process. I think there are steps and phases that we will be going through it. Currently, we are testing, then we might move to an up-to-up model, but actual end delivery at the doorstep of the user is probably some time away.
Great. So, Karthik, I understand this is a futuristic, and we are getting ready for this. And Manav, want to understand your views. Are we ready for this change?
Sure. Rahul and Karthik, the way I look at drone coming into deliveries as a domain member technology company, this is the much required enhancement in the industry. When we look at what can a drone technology bring to the table when we talk about deliveries, we are looking forward for this technology to bring down the cost of delivery and bring down the time to deliver. Now, if you look at the industry overall, right, no one in the delivery space is sustaining without external support. And that is not a very good validation of the business model all of us are working on. Now, I see domain as an enabler to make the industry self-sustainable or possibly profitable. Also, it will provide me the much needed variety on my app, where I can possibly order from Indranagar or farther sitting in Whitefield area. So that's how I see that much needed development, and I'm looking forward for Dunzo to take that first step and get this sorted as soon as possible.
Awesome. So Karthik and Manav, that's all from my side. I want to thank again for joining us today. I request my colleague Sakshi to start the Q&A process. Sakshi, over to you.
Thank you, Rahul. So the first question we have is for Karthik. Dunzo is primarily known for working with stores and retailers, but how can FMCG brand leverage players like Dunzo to drive contactless commerce?
Interesting. I think it's a great question, and I'll actually break it up into, there are a bunch of things that we do for brands, but I'll focus on two things which has actually seen a lot of traction, right? So first one is the whole D2C world that we talked about. As brands are converting their distribution centers into pickup points, the distribution centers can actually be listed on Dunzo as a store. So if you actually go to Dunzo Bangalore right now, you will see Hershey's, Coca-Cola and Britannia stores from which you can order those specific products, right? I think that's one way in which all of these brands can get directly closer, much closer to the user, faster deliveries, and especially in times of a broken supply chain. The second thing that we have seen a lot of traction for brands is what we call brand sampling. So in the FMCG world, sampling is the, what do you call it? It's like it's a 50-year-old product where they actually go out, give samples to everybody. In the pre-COVID world, people used to actually go there, go physically and distribute products, right? And in that process, social distancing are not mentioned. But with the advent of COVID and the ability to send samples digitally, like we have worked with a lot of brands to actually send out their new products on Dunzo, and we actually deliver it directly to the user, and they actually run a feedback process, right? Where it's much brands can actually get a targeted feedback on the product, on the pricing, on the packaging, right? I think so. Those are the two big things that we've been working with brands, opening up their D2C websites on Dunzo, and secondly, helping with digital sampling of all of their physical products.
Thank you, Karthik. So the next question is for Manav. What role does Urban Piper play in this new ecosystem?
A very relevant question. I do get to hear, because Urban Piper is that invisible layer. So we do not definitely get the required FaceTime out loud. So again, as Karthik mentioned during the discussion, Urban Piper is that invisible layer of integration, which is enabling all the new entrants in the market and the existing entrants to increase their penetration. We have been operating in this space for about 5+ years now, and the integration space is a difficult one to cater because of the fragmentation of systems in India. And that's where we have done a lot of hard work integrating with a variety of systems at the restaurant side and integrating with the aggregator side like Dunzo, Swiggy, Zomato, Amazon Food. And the key is that when the market needs it, they don't need to do all the development for every brand, and the brands don't need to do all the development for a new entrant coming in. Providing that ease of operation is our motto, specifically when it comes to contactless commerce.
Thank you,
Well,
Manav.
Dunzo is like a big fan of Urban Piper, right? Because from a Dunzo's lens, can you imagine how difficult it is to do 25 different integrations, right? Instead, like if you tie up with Urban Piper, it just opens up a very large market at one go for us. So both from saving engineering product bandwidth as well as at opening up a larger space from at one go is fantastic.
So thanks,
Right.
Karthik.
So my next question is for Karthik. How is Dunzo helping retailers in categories drive contactless commerce, which are not the part of the main categories at Dunzo? Like you just discussed about the 8 main categories. So if you can answer that.
Fantastic. So I think one of the big things that we saw during COVID is that a lot of the retailers which cannot get listed on Dunzo, they actually get orders on WhatsApp, on phone and all. But one of the singular challenges that they had is that they cannot really deliver it to their end customer, right? Because the customers are actually not coming to the stores. They don't have delivery boys. So what we actually did is that we have actually opened up our logistics stack where retailers like say hardware stores which can't be listed on Dunzo, right? All of these stores can actually use Dunzo's logistics services just to deliver, right? So they don't need to be listed on Dunzo. They don't need to get into a commission sharing model and all of that. They can actually use Dunzo's logistics app to just go and kind of deliver from point A to point B. And that has actually seen great traction. Like in the last 3 months alone, we have had 5,000 small retailers ranging from hardware shops to fashion boutiques to home bakers, right? Who previously couldn't really access their users and are actually using Dunzo logistics only solutions to be able to connect to their users. And this entire process is contactless in nature. And I think that's something we're super excited about. It makes up now 12% of our kind of business and we hope to grow. We have seen great traction for just a logistics only services for all of these categories who can't get listed on Dunzo.
Thank you so much, Karthik. My next question is for Manav. How do you see the restaurant landscape changing due to COVID?
Thanks, Sakshi. A very relevant question in the times we are. So, as anyone can guess, right, there is a added stress in the industry because of COVID, because of the fear of people stepping out. It is creating pressure, a lot of pressure in the industry for survival. The way I see it is it is creating a shift. I mean, if you can think about the restaurant industry as the chained brands and the standalone brands, what COVID is creating is a lot of pressure on the standalone restaurants to that extent that they might not be available as we move forward. Now, the positive side of it is also bringing the new entrants at a faster speed into the industry, the likes of cloud kitchens, which is becoming the new next boom in the restaurant, where everyone is trying to deliver to a larger extent. And also I'm seeing the chained restaurant growth taking over the single outlet going down. So in nutshell, how do I see that, if 100% space of restaurants as in the location, with COVID, there is about a 20% shutdown is what we are looking at. But with the new entrants coming in, that gap will be filled. So we will be, at par as what we were at the beginning of this year till mid of next year. So it's like a zero P&L movement in terms of restaurants.
Thank you, Manav. I have the other question is for Karthik. What are the big changes in consumption patterns that Dunzo saw in its user behavior during
Interesting.
COVID?
I think this data was something we were actually looking at last month when we were doing a review of the last 2 quarters. And we saw 3 interesting kind of things that we saw. First one is that we saw a shift of users buying staple products from more established brands. Because I think there is this whole implicit notion कि यार अगर ये ITC का आशीर्वाद है So it is better package. It's a lot more safer than a cheaper private label, right? So I think that was one of the big transitions that we saw in terms of the migration from what you would call a local brand to a much more established brand, even if it is slightly pricey. The second thing that we saw is that so people actually use Dunzo to purchase fruits and vegetables, right? Because fruits and vegetables is not something that you can buy at one go, stock up in your fridge for like 2-3 weeks and then buy again. So previously people used to purchase kind of fruits and vegetables once every 7 to 8 days. But I think what COVID has done is that initially, I'm just taking out the first couple of months where the supply chain challenges. But in this new world, people are actually buying lesser, but buying more often. So the purchase of vegetables is now happening every 3 to 4 days, which is super interesting for us because people don't really want to stock up. They want to eat fresh stuff instead of something that's been in the refrigerator kind of for a while. And the third thing that we have seen is something we hinted at here. People are migrating towards stores which actually give you like better contactless experience, a much more safety driven experience. For example, in meat, we have actually seen people like a slight bias of people purchasing from say the likes of a Licious or a Fresh to Home, which come with that safety and kind of hygiene kind of constraints compared to your neighborhood kind of butcher, right? I think those have been like the top 2-3 trends in terms of consumer behavior, at least what we have seen in the last quarter.
Thank you, Karthik. I have another question for you. So it's with COVID, we are noticing a new segment is opening up, that is cloud kirana stores. Do you think cloud kirana stores can survive once COVID is
I think
over?
it's a very, very interesting question, right? Whether cloud kirana stores can survive. I think I'll just quickly walk you through economics of it, right? So grocery is an extremely low margin business, right? And if it's a low margin business, the only way you can actually make money is if you have very high volume. Because the 2% ka margin, 3% ka margin hai, let's say. So it means you need to have very high volumes to be able to make it sustainable. Think of it like an airline kind of industry. Margins hai nahi, but you need volumes to be able to really make money, right? So given that cloud kirana stores can only can actually make things work by doing two things. One, they're actually able to drive that volume by whether by getting listed across multiple platforms. Otherwise, without the volume, it's very difficult to recover the capex cost, because beyond the low margins, there is also capex cost of running the year. The second thing that we actually foresee happening is that a lot of these cloud kirana stores might actually move to selling their own branded private label products to kind of increase the margin, right? I think slightly early to determine whether cloud kirana stores can survive or not. But I think the key challenge would be, can they get enough demand to overcome the high capex costs and the low margins that a grocery business brings forward?
So, sorry to interrupt over here. Karthik, want to add, what would be the difference between a dark store and the cloud kirana store?
So a dark store would be a cloud kirana store, which is basically there's no walk-in. They're only selling online.
Okay.
Just
so advantage,
they're selling only online.
Advantage for a buyer would be like they would be getting a good discount.
Yes.
Great. Carry on, Sakshi.
Yeah. Thank you, Rahul. So Karthik, there's another question for you. Dunzo is big player in grocery market. How do you make sure that items are selling on MRP price?
That's a great question. That's something we have been trying to solve for like the last 2 years, right? Because I mean, like the reality is that even in the offline world, if you purchase milk, the margins on milk are so less that even in the offline world, wo aapse 1 rupaya zyada maang leta hai, saying ki sir cooling charges, right? So welcome to India, right? I mean, it's the unfortunate reality. But I think we have taken a conscious call that we would not be listing prices above MRP, because there is also legal angle to it, right? What happens in the offline world, there is no record of it, so he can actually sell it at a rupee higher in the name of cooling charges. But legally, we are not able to. We cannot do that, right? So when an MRP item is listed, I think our team has actually built up a process where you're actually able to. So every product, just to give you some context, every FMCG product has got something called an HSN tag, right? So each time a user, rather a store wants to say, okay, this is the new price of this item, he actually has to send us the HSN tag of the specific item that he wants to change. So we then run the HSN tag and compare it across multiple platforms, as well as the Government of India's central HSN kind of directory, to understand whether this is the right price or not, right? And then only the price gets updated. So which usually happens is that it takes about 24 hours to update the price on an item. We are kind of still trying to automate this stuff, and kind of over a period of time, hopefully we would be able to. Yeah, I think I'm actually super excited if Manav's team at Urban Piper can automate this whole process where we don't have to do the things manually at our end, right? Because I think MRP prices is one of the biggest challenges. FNBs, however, is an extremely difficult place to solve because there is no government defined MRP. Her store अपना price करेगा and he will say कि oh, mine is a better kind of fruits and vegetables, it is fresher fruits and vegetables, so the pricing is different. So FNB is not something that we have really targeted in terms of MRP price, but what we do try to ensure an FNB is कि the prices are in an 80 to 120% range. If somebody is selling the same item at 2x the price, तो कुछ गड़बड़ है. So we have internal ranges for FNB prices. So FNB will actually see dramatic differences from one store to another store at Dunzo, because it's very difficult to actually control that.
Yeah, Sakshi, I would want to add to it as what Karthik was showing. Look, as a responsible corporate citizen in this space, what Urban Piper has done at large, specifically for the restaurant space, is we do not allow the provision in our platform where you can have same item listed for different pricing at different channels. Then price parity is the utmost is of utmost importance when we are onboarding the brands, and we are very transparent to the brands coming in that hey, if you are looking to put one pricing on Dunzo and second on Swiggy and third on Zomato, we will not be able to support it. And this is what we are, again, just to be a responsible corporate citizen, we do again have that developed in the system, and we don't allow price differences across, and we are able to do this well across restaurants because there is no subjectivity, as in same dish cannot be listed on multiple price point. Definitely, as Karthik said, difficult value proposition when you can mark an apple as a Gala apple or apple as a Fiji apple. It's now difficult to say what is the right price.
Thank you, Manav. So the next question is for you. For restaurant technology solution, what would you suggest? Developing in-house, hiring a service company, choosing a product company, and why?
Very interesting question, and in fact, this question, I mean, almost everyone who knows me, I mean, in the sector, they come and ask me as an advice that hey, what should I do? Every restaurateur who is a close friend and a known, comes and asks what should I do when at the point where they are deciding about technology. Now, my advice to all of them is same, that hey, you guys have your hands full. Managing a restaurant is not a small task. Again, I've seen a life of a restaurateur, I mean, from close interactions, and it itself is a challenge. Technology on the other side is similarly a giant. You need a lot of expertise and a lot of serious stakeholders coming in to commit to a solution. My advice is that you should always leave the job to the experts in the domain to make it cost effective, time effective. I would always vote towards the product companies which are working on a focused problem solving, which will give you the advantage of cost and time as we move forward. And luckily, with the SaaS and the startup being big in India, we have a lot of good companies in that space which you guys can leverage.
Thank you, Manav. So the last question for the day is for Karthik. Similar to Swiggy, does Dunzo fulfill order from Dunzo operator, dark kitchen, or store?
So unlike competitors, we actually don't own dark stores, but there are a lot of dark stores that are listed on the platform. What we do is that we help them with all of the technologies and the services that they require. So something like an Express Mart or Tiny Mart, that are not actually Dunzo owned, but we actually help them with the operations. So in Bangalore, there are a bunch of dark stores that are actually listed on the platform where you can order groceries. So we are not what I would call operated by Dunzo. It's just that we assist those merchants in setting up a dark store, whatever technology that they need, whatever people process support that they need.
Oh, thank you, Karthik. I just received another question for you in continuation with this. Like in COVID, how do you make sure food is getting prepared by maintaining hygiene standard?
So I think there are two parts to it, right? The first part is that a lot of the stores that we have actually partnered with, right? We actually do a recce of all of those stores to ensure that they are following the right set of hygiene processes, right? Each time our delivery partner goes to the store to pick up items, he almost functions as a what you would call a little spy to check ki yahan pe sab, the hygiene standards are maintained or not, and all of that, right? So all of that recce kind of also happens, right? The second part is that what we have seen is that all of these restaurants have actually naturally transitioned to this high hygiene standards because they also understand that if they don't maintain the same level of safety and hygiene standards, they will not be able to drive the demand, right? But I think I think Manav might be actually slightly better to answer this question because I think he works directly with a large number of food industry players.
Yeah. So thanks, Karthik, for pointing it to me. I mean, also what we have seen is there's a list of things which has happened to ensure hygiene and safety are the most important factors while you are allowing deliveries to happen through your platform. In that sense, I would say Dunzo, Swiggy, Zomato have done a fair bit of their part, where identifying which partners are following certain protocols on hygiene, which partners are measuring temperatures of the delivery and the food preparation staff at the outlet. And in that space, I've seen rapid development and a lot of ownership. Now brands are getting tagged as per the standards they are following, and people are also consciously choosing from the highest standard brands, not looking at the price point. So again, a few things which has changed when in the industry is pricing is not the only thing which decides from where to order. Safety is the paramount importance factor for you to choose a restaurant, and that has bring in a change in the restaurant space also, where they are taking additional steps to make sure that they are able to prepare food with the right standards and safety and deliver it to you guys.
Thank you, Manav. We do have other questions as well, but since we are running out of time, we'll be reaching out to them personally. And thank you so much for taking your time out and giving us such a good informative session. Thank you, Rahul and Manav and Karthik.
Thanks, Sakshi, Karthik, thanks, Rahul. A pleasure.
Yeah,
Thanks, Rahul.
same here.
Those who came in, and I mean, definitely you guys can reach out to any of us for any further questions on the topic. This is something very close to, we discussed a lot in detail also offline. This is something very close to us. So any help we can do in the industry in this space will be more than welcome.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.